This video will be about High Church Lutheran tradition, how it started in Germany, and who was inspired by it here in Sweden with the concept of Schartauanism and Giertz. And I let myself explain all of this history from when I was in Wittenberg. When talking about High Church tradition, we can technically start with like Lutheran Orthodoxy and go all the way to the beginning. But it's not really what's important. It's the rebellion against the United Church. Now I'm saying, whoa, what did I just mention? What is the United Church? Never heard of that before. Germany in the 1800s decided to, unite. United German Volk. But to do that with such a splintered group, not just splintered in language, they all speak German, but different accent or culture, but religion. Germans are very split religiously. It's a lot of Catholics, a lot of Lutherans, a lot of Reformed, and many other small groups. But when the idea of what the Prussians started, and the idea of more uniting all the German people together, they decided, let's create a state church for the Germans, and make it both Lutheran and Calvinist. So they got put in together, created the United Church. Is what we see today. And the United Church is fully nation church. It's based upon the current thing. This is why people have concerns with EKD today, and even back then. So High Church tradition in the German sense started mostly in Saxony, but started in the high Lutheran areas where there were more Lutherans than Calvinists, where they said, whoa, why unite with the Reformed? Why unite, like, those Zwingliites, they're crazy. Why should we be with them? We want to stick with our own Lutheran tradition. So we're gonna, obviously, we want Lutheranism, we want the Lutheran Church. So no, that doesn't bring us united. So a lot of these writings and focusing on Lutheran Orthodoxy and Lutheran tradition is to remain Lutheran and not with the United. So it's a split off group of pure teaching Lutherans.
O Jesu, det blodet som talar så milt, ditt blod som från korset flöt neder, giv att det på mig ej må bliva förspilt. På dig jag förtröstar och beder, Gud vare mig syndare nådig.
The German High Church tradition also made its way into Sweden and influenced these three people. I let myself in Wittenberg explain a bit more. Swedish High Church tradition can be split up in three parts. The first one came from the west and the south of Sweden in the 1800s, called, and you have to pardon my pronunciation on this one, Schartauanismen, Schautau. And this tradition was brought forth by a man named Giertz, and his book Christi Kyrka, meaning Christ Church. And then the second one is the high of High Church Lutheranism. It was brought forward of Gunnar Rosendal. And then the third one is the one that abandoned Lutheranism to focus on Anglo-Catholicism. And people within this is von Rosen and the SSB organization. I just want to take another note in real quick here and talk about Nathan Söderblom. When it came to the two different theses, the one in 1817 and the one in 1917, Nathan actually read both of these and took some inspiration from it, because the 1917 one was much more of a High Church tradition form of a thesis. And there was some inspiration, so High Church has inspired the Swedish Church. But let's start and talk about Schartauanismen. It's a Christian revival movement inside of Sweden in the 1800s, especially 1820 and 1830. It was a way for mostly women to find a way out of the very strict social order that's put in place. And to explain it, I tell you a story. At 17, she wandered without the permission of her parents to a church in Bohuslän to listen to the sectarian priest Gustav Lennart Dahl. Dahl was a younger priest who has been taught under Henrik Schartau. He taught a new form of Christianity with very strict personal duty on every individual. The duty and moral of a man is what saves him from hell. Many claim that Mr. Dahl was committing heresies and should not be priest. Mr. Dahl had to stand in trial for his heresies, quote-unquote abuse of his priesthood. The parents claimed that he was writing letters to their daughter, warning her if she doesn't do justice with God, she will burn in hell, and she was afraid of her life, they claimed. But the truth of the matter was, her parents were very abusive. Her parents did not allow her to ever go to church. They didn't allow her to have any Christian friends. And Mr. Dahl pointed this out to her, that it is very important for you to have a Christian upbringing, to have Christian friends and proper Christian teaching. Otherwise, yes, according to scripture, hell awaits you. There was one concern with this judgment. The 17-year-old girl was dead. She died of stress fever, and the stress fever proved the point of Priest Dahl, that she has been abused by her parents, that the stress that she was facing from home made her sick and died. He didn't threaten her, he wanted to help her. And because of this, he was allowed to still be a priest. This is how many women viewed Schartauanismo. It was a way of them removing themselves, fleeing from the social order, the very strict, highly patriotic, very poor lifestyle, because most of these women came from poor farmers. A way out of it, and a way to God. The person who brought forth a lot of these concepts into the modern church, and a lot of the imagery you have seen in the background, comes from Bo Giertz.
Låt er inte lockas av fåfängans marknad. Genom sina profeter har Herren Gud talat dom över all slags fåfänglighet. Och hur ska en husbehovsbrännare utan ånger finna Herrens nåd och barmhärtighet? Ja, Gud hatar synden. Men han älskar syndaren.
Bo Giertz is considered one of the more important Christians in Sweden in the 1900s. He was quite the author. He wrote a lot of this, sort of romanticizing and talking about these concepts that would have otherwise been forgotten in church history. But he melded the concept of sectarianism and the focus on the layman, well-being of the layman, and the duty of the individual, together with high church Lutheran traditions. Focus on the sacraments, focus on the prayer, also caring about the individual. I shall state that there is a lot to this man, and there's quite a lot of things that I can talk about for a longer period of time than I can do now. I can't do justice to him at all, but he is also, in a sense, a more conservative, following the Scandinavian Lutheran tradition, while being very conservative, for example, being against females becoming priests. But he was a conservative fighter, quote-unquote, that many in the cross-bearers, for example, or the people who wrote the thesis in 2025 can look up to when it comes to an example within the Swedish church on how to be conservative Scandinavian Lutheran. Now we can talk about Gunnar Rosendal. Now the difference between someone like Bo, who focused more on pietism and all the traditional Scandinavian Lutheranism, Gunnar Rosendal follows a high church tradition of the confessional version, the more German version, focusing a lot on the Book of Concord. There's the main focus here. So with Scandinavian Lutherans, the Book of Concord obviously is important, it's part of who they are, but their main focus has never really been the Book of Concord. But with confessional Lutherans, the Book of Concord is pretty much above the Bible in some sense, it feels like. And Gunnar Rosendal is a part of the high church tradition of the confessional Lutherans. Also the concept of calling themselves Catholics instead of Protestants, because they're evangelical Catholic church. This is why you see a lot of the more splinter groups joining Gunnar Rosendal's ideas, such as Mission Province, but also why they have nuns. Yes, Gunnar Rosendal, sort of with his rhetoric and who he was, made it acceptable for the Swedish church to get nuns. He was the confessional grouping in the Swedish church.
Han har benämnts som högkyrklighetens främste profet.
And now let's talk about the last person, Mary von Rosen, another incredibly influential person in Swedish church history. She created Societas Sancte Birgitte, focusing on Heliga Birgitta or Bridget of Sweden, a famous Swedish saint. Together with Snartan Söderblom, they wanted to bring a lot of these Anglo-Catholic traditions into the church, This is why you see much more of an ecumenical role with both the Anglican Church and the Catholic Church. This was actually one of the groups I thought about contacting and actually joining in one of their dinners, but we'll see about that next year. But again, what Mary von Rosen mostly did was trying to focus on ecumenical works together with the Catholic Church and the Anglican Church to get the high church former traditions back into the church.